Good morning, Madam Clerk.
This is it.
Good morning.
Please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderman Moore.
Turn the heat on.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Muhammad. Chairman Conway.
Present.
5 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The first thing, we're going to hear Board Bill 130 this morning. We're not going to take any action on it. I know they have a committee substitute that did get here, and we'll come back next week and adopt the committee substitute and then decide what you want to do with the bill. But this morning we have Alderwoman Spencer on Board Bill 130. So just tell me what the bill's going to do and then what you want to do with the committee substitute next week.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Ways and Means Committee. Board Bill 130, I'd like to kind of describe it so we have an idea of what we're looking at here. What we have before us is a bill that changes the funding mechanism for the upgrades of the Scottrade Center. Last session, we passed ordinance 70473, which essentially authorized a financing agreement for the rehabilitation of the property at 1401 Clark Avenue, otherwise known as Scottrade Center. The passage of that bill will result in the issuance of bonds to be repaid by an sort of specified funding source, relying on general revenue. What Board Bill 130 does is replace the general revenue with a fund set up to collect a modest ticket fee. You know what happens at the Board of Aldermen a lot. We are rushed to get things through. We don't have adequate staffing. We all know that. Oftentimes things get past us. In the case of this ordinance, you know, we were rushed in our deliberations. We didn't take a look at all pieces of important information. Most importantly here, we didn't take a look at the lease. And that's really important because what it does is it describes the relationship between the city, who owns the land, and the leaseholders, the Keel Partnership Group. I think it's important to look at this specifically because what the lease says is that and it's actually...
Alderwoman, we're on Board Bill number 130.
I understand,
Okay.
but this is kind of describing what it is we're doing.
So I was getting ready to say, I need the lease.
The lease is on page 2 of Board Bill 130. And I'm only gonna read a little highlight from it. Excuse me, what the lease says is that the lessee, right, starting at page 2, line 10. So this is a net lease, what we have, and what the lease says specifically is that the lessee, the Keel Partnership Group, shall perform all obligations connected with arising out of owning, occupying, managing, or using the Keel site, without limitation and including property management fees and expenses, all sums for maintenance, repair, and replacement of improvements. And then it goes on to say that if the city pays more money, there will be additional money. If additional money is spent by the city, it will result in additional rent. Okay, that is what the lease says. We didn't have this last year, but it's important now because we do have it. And it is a binding document, and it does describe the obligation relationship.
Alderwoman, we're on Board Bill 130. Why am I here this morning?
What we're doing here, and what we did with the previous ordinance, and what we're doing with Board Bill 130, is specifying what monies will be used to pay for the upgrades outlined in Ordinance 70473. Looking at that list of improvements, I'll pass this around. This is from last year's ordinance. I'll keep one copy for myself. We have replacement of refrigerant piping in the rink, new replacement scoreboard, new replacement administrative offices, something called hot water, $2 million on that, restroom renovations, an upgrade to the retail store, lighting upgrades, sound systems. These are replacements of improvements, which are very specifically described in the lease. It says verbatim in the lease, replacement of improvements will be paid for by the Keel Partnership Group. It could not be more clear. General maintenance and improvements is the responsibility of the lessee, not the city. We were under a misinterpretation or misunderstanding of the lease last year when we passed the financing agreement. This is actually very typical of a net lease. This is not unusual. In fact, tenants often and almost always in commercial leases pay for maintenance and improvements in a commercial lease, a net commercial lease.
Alderman,
So-
look, I understand that this, you know, whatever the court is doing, the court is doing. You have a board bill, that's what we're talking about.
That's right.
You know, the Board of Aldermen passed this last year, and that's a different issue. What is Board Bill 130 going to do?
Board Bill 130 goes hand in hand with the board bill we passed last year. Last year, the board bill we passed shifted the obligation from the Keel Partnership Group to the City of St. Louis to pay for improvements. What Board Bill 130 does is it, in effect, shifts some of that responsibility back, okay?
Why do you amend that bill?
Say that again?
I was wondering when what you just said. I'm sorry, Chairperson, man.
Let's
I'll
keep her
listen
on
to
Board
this.
Bill 130,
I'm sorry,
and
go
then
ahead.
we'll
Go ahead.
ask her question.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So what Board Bill 130 does is it goes hand in hand with the board bill that we passed last year. It leaves that in, with the committee substitute, we've removed the repealing language, relieving the existing ordinance in place, providing for all of the upgrades specified last year and approved last year. What this does is it specifies money to be set aside to pay for those improvements, okay? The city, which gets none of the revenue of Scottrade, okay, we get $1 a year in rent, 0 property tax. The Keel Partnership Group owns the naming rights of the facility we've been told we owned. What we get is the sales tax and a fraction of the sales tax, okay? We get, in fact, less than half of the sales tax. The state gets the lion's share. The city gets 3.6 cents on every dollar. What Board Bill number 130 does is it shifts the burden from the entity, the city, which gets crumbs on every dollar spent there, and it provides a mechanism for the people who visit the center to pay into this fund. We know that Scottrade's a regional asset. It serves not just the city. In fact, only 11% of hockey patrons that go there live in the city. More people live in Illinois than live in the city of St. Louis who enjoy Scottrade, okay?
All
If
right.
we're gonna go for a regional solution, we have to do one that will be orchestrated quickly, okay? Conjoining the city and county, including a bi-state taxing district, these things will take years to orchestrate. And if we were to include Illinois, it would be an act of Congress that would create something like that. So what Board Bill 130 does is it creates a regional solution today, quickly, and allows the people that enjoy the facility to pay into it. The beauty of this solution is that there is already a facility fee assessed on tickets at Scottrade Center. This fee is $3.50. You see it when you buy a ticket. Okay, it's called a facility fee. Currently, that facility fee goes into the revenue stream of the hockey ownership group. What Board Bill 130 does is it sets up a fund, allows those fees, a very similar fee, to go into a sports and entertainment facility fund to be accessed by the sports and facility ownership groups for any city-owned sports and entertainment facility, so that those buildings can be upgraded with money set aside specifically for that purpose. With an annual, with $60 million in annual sales that was reported by the hockey ownership group, this ticket fee will generate about $3 million annually. Coupled with the community improvement district that was passed last year in ordinance 70473, that will add another $1 million. We're talking about $4 million a year coming into this fund. That will more than generate the bonding capacity required to repay the bonds outlined in the board bill that we passed last year. What this also does is safeguard the general revenue of the city of St. Louis by protecting it and eliminating the use of general revenue funds for the upgrade of this facility. This is incredibly important. We know from the S&P report that came out last year that our flexibility, our budgetary performance has declined. We have lost 2 ratings in our S&P. And in light of that, S&P determined in their ratings, and if I have copies of that, if anybody wants to
Okay,
see that.
Here, let's,
We don't want to, we don't.
I know, we're gonna slow her down here.
Okay.
So,
Because we're gonna move on at 9:30 to the other bills.
So, real quickly in summary, what this bill doesn't do, it does not stop any renovations from going on at the Scott Trade Center. In fact, it provides for the entirety of Phase 1 as outlined in Ordinance 70473. What it does do is it safeguards the city's general revenue by prohibiting the use of general revenue for the upgrades of this facility, and it provides for a funding mechanism and a fund for the upgrades of this and other city-owned sports facilities by collecting a modest ticket fee on tickets sold at venues that are owned by the city.
All right, thank you. I think what we'll do is, we'll have to go through this. Just a couple of quick questions, okay? Your substitute, what your original bill was trying to do is repeal what we did as the Board of Aldermen last year.
What it did was it did include repeal language
Okay,
while,
and then-
while also still providing for all of the funds requested in last year's ordinance. So to simplify things and make it a little bit more clear what we're doing
Okay,
here.
Just let me ask the question, Alderwoman. And your substitute that we'll do next week or look at will eliminate the repeal language, is
That's
what you're
right.
saying?
Yes,
Okay. And then, so that part, I'm, is amenable because we as a body in the city, when we commit to something, we don't go back on our word or nobody will do business with us as a city or make investments. Alderwoman Davis, every member gets 2 minutes of questions.
I think I only need one,
Okay.
because unfortunately I got really confused. And the reason that I got confused was because I think we're trying to do a couple of things in here that we shouldn't be trying to do, because it's not in your lane to do. And so, we don't have the appropriate information in here from the appropriate departments if we were gonna deal with the actual funding mechanisms of these contracts and leases. So that appropriate information is not in this bill. So I'm extremely confused, and I do need to really take some time to go through it. And it has, it doesn't have any real, it really doesn't do anything but create another lane over here that is not attached to what we passed last year, and it's a bit confusing. So I'm just gonna take a moment later and pass and try to figure this out, and I will be asking for additional information from the appropriate entities that need to clear this up for us. Because right now it's a little bit confusing. You know, it would be different if we were just asking to increase the amount of the fee on the entertainment tax in the story, but, so we'll move forward. I'm done.
if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the amusement tax, we can't increase that because the amusement tax, as we know, is rebated back to the ownership group as it is right now. We do specify in the board bill that the appropriate funds will be set forth by the comptroller, who is completely and unwaveringly supportive of not only of this bill. In fact, I can pass her statement around regarding Board Bill 130. She is the comptroller, she does support this bill, and she will be in charge of those funds, as specified in the ordinance.
Okay, so I'll skip over me. Carol, you moved. So Carol,
So what you're proposing here is an alternative mechanism to finance the improvements at Scott Trade.
Correct.
Okay, and this is being proactive, knowing that the lawsuit is pending, and so in case they would lose the lawsuits, Scott Trade Partners.
That's
This
right.
would be another mechanism for them to come forward and use that money and bond it to get the improvements done.
They would be able to access the money immediately once we've set this up. you know,
Even
we
though
could-
we just begun to collect it?
That's right, so we would have the bonding capacity with this and talking with
On
the
the
comptroller.
future income,
Yes, so
I
we
see.
would, once the fee is set in place, the comptroller feels comfortable that we would be able to have the bonding authority immediately with those funds coming in to repay them in the future.
That would estimate future revenue? that-
Exactly, yes.
Okay, we could bond against it?
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
okay. And so, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, on the 350 facility fee, we are gonna add something to that, or just redirect that 350 facility?
Well, that would be up to the ownership group. You know, right now, it is, any venue owner is allowed to charge their customers any which way they want. So they can add a $25 facility fee, they can add a $5 lighting fee, they can add a 50-cent charge for your seat. They can literally designate any way they want to charge their customers. They just so happen to right now include a facility fee on the end, you know, when you go buy your $50 ticket, it says $50, and then at the end you get taxes, and then there's all of a sudden a facility fee. That currently goes to the revenue stream. What this does is says that there does need to be a 5% facility fee, and that will be directed to the city. If the venue owners would also like a facility fee to go into their revenue stream as they currently have orchestrated, they're free to do so. But, you know, it is our hope that if the city is being asked to fund the upgrades of the facility, that, you know,
We would
that
have
we
the
would,
capacity
we
rather
would get
than
the
going into
money.
general revenue, yeah.
I'll remind, you know, they do own the naming rights as well,
Right.
of this facility, and there's a lot of other revenue sources
What was your
that
question?
they enjoy.
Yeah, so it would be like an additional 5%, that was what I wanted to know.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we're done.
All right, Friday I'll announce when we schedule the meeting for next week. There is a substitute, and so I'm gonna pass those out today, and then we'll, you know, look at it next week.
So is this,
And I'm actually thinking Wednesday may be a better day for our meeting next week if someone doesn't have an, you know, has an objection.
Is there a HUD meeting next week? There is. There is. A lot of us are on HUD too.
Okay,
This is the committee stuff.
I'm sorry. We just took one.
well, then Thursday morning might be it. Or I'll go, you know, let me look at the calendar
Okay.
between now and today is Thursday, tomorrow, and we'll try to come up with a date. Okay. I would move that next we take up Board Bill number 96. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
aye,
Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderman Muhammad, Chairman Conway.
Aye.
5 aye votes.
Alderman, you're recognized on Board Bill 96.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill 96 is simply a bill to sell a parcel of land that the city didn't actually know it owned until we did some serious investigating. Under the MacArthur Bridge, the MacArthur Bridge is just north of Shodo, crosses the Mississippi. It's a rail bridge. There's a number of buildings along 4th Street adjacent to the bridge that have recently been purchased and are being redeveloped. One of them contains an Emo's Pizzeria, for our chairman there. And Barry Adelstein, a developer, has done a bunch of work in Midtown, has purchased the properties, he's rehabbed them, they've done a great job, he's got some commercial tenants for them, and basically he wants to acquire this parcel for about $5,000. Again, we didn't know we owned it. And it's going to be part of an MSD rain garden. He's going to use it as a rain garden. It will help facilitate runoff from his surface parking in the rear of his building. So I would ask for your favorable consideration. I've got Joe Wilson here, who represents Barry and the Midtown Locust Properties LLC, is here if you have any more specific questions than that. Thank you.
Okay. Emo's Pizza doesn't own that. Emo's.
No, they don't own.
That's a
It's a
franchise.
franchise. Correct, correct. They don't own the building either.
Just making sure. What does everybody want to do?
Well, unless anybody has questions, I just make a motion, we pass Board Bill 96 out for two pass recommendation.
I'd just like to,
What's your
on
second?
page 2, you got the wrong city register listed.
Oh, yes. We have a new one.
Oh, look at that. I think this may have been introduced prior to that. We can, I think that's, we can call that a Scrivener's error and correct it.
I tell you what, let's come back tomorrow morning on this one.
You wanna come back tomorrow morning?
I have a
At
meeting,
9:35.
I have a meeting tomorrow morning.
Why?
We have a meeting at 8:30.
Who does?
I
Legislative.
do.
Yeah,
We
legislation.
have legislation meeting.
We backed up.
Okay, this is only
We
gonna take
know
a
who
minute
you
tomorrow.
register.
Well, so I can just do I can do a floor amendment on it if it's easier, because it's a sale of land, so I need a bunch of votes anyway. I can probably pull it off of the, I can pull it off of the consent calendar. What would you guys prefer? I'll be,
Well, since I work for Emo's Pizza and you brought it up, I just would rather have a fifth person here besides me.
Oh,
oh,
so
I
you could
see, so you can abstain. Okay,
Oh, I.
Okay.
Okay,
that's fine.
Is Louis here?
no, so let's do this at, Mr. Clerk, please, somebody post,
Yes.
Madam Clerk, somebody post this for 9:45 tomorrow morning.
9:45?
Yeah.
It'll all take us a minute to do.
Let's do, hey,
Okay.
Carol, how long will your bill take tomorrow?
I hope 15 minutes. huh?
So you get,
Well, we
start
need
at
24
8:30.
notice.
We need 24
We
hours.
need 24
You're
hours.
right, you're right.
Thank you.
So for 9:40, just to be safe.
All
by
right.
the time you-
Board Bill number 174.
All right.
Mr. Shepherd, you want to tell me what this is? 9:45. 24 hours.
Good morning, committee. A couple years ago, there was a board bill passed that became an ordinance that was sponsored by President Reed that set up friends of accounts for the 6 recreation centers that the city owns. And this allowed people to make private donations to a particular recreation center if they wanted to. So over the last couple of years, there's been a little over $13,000 accumulated in the fund, and we got a request from Recreation if we could appropriate the money from the fund, from the different funds accounts to the rec center so that they could be spent in the general fund budget for programming for most of them. A few of the recreation centers only had a small dollar amount donated to them. So those dollar amounts, 2 of them for $300, are going towards just materials and supplies.
So,
who
And so this will
collected-
allow the money that was collected to be spent.
does anyone have questions?
I do.
Okay, so we'll
Who
break down.
collect, I mean, how was this gathered?
There were fund accounts set up by, and the comptroller's office is one that's over the fund accounts, but people could go into the recreation centers and write a check.
I
and
see,
a donation
I see.
directly to the recreation
So are they still
center.
doing this or no?
Yeah, they're still, the funds are still there, people can still make these donations directly to the recreation centers. This is just a point in time, a couple months ago, what has been collected, and we're taking it now and taking it out of those fund accounts, which are just holding them, and putting them in the general fund budget so that they can be utilized.
And I don't see Cherokee on here. They don't have any funds?
If nobody donated.
They
no
probably
money.
didn't have any money
Okay,
donated to
I
them.
got you, okay. So they all had it, but some didn't collect anything. I got you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, no more further
So
questions.
we'll make that motion that we pass Board Bill 174 out with due pass recommendation.
So moved.
And previous roll,
Second,
Aye.
previous.
so previous roll on that. So, in the previous roll, it's there. So I think so the meeting's adjourned.
Okay.
See you all in the morning.
This one, I got-
Motion
gotta
to
read the
adjourn?
committee subject.
Well, the motion to adjourn, we'll keep it legal. Anybody want to second my motion?
Second.
Second.
Keep it legal.